So hello everyone. So I'm Varun from Phone Arena, and here we have Hitesh Raj Bhagat from Truecaller. So Hitesh, you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Varun. Happy to be here. I head corporate communications for Truecaller globally.
And yeah, so Truecaller has been in the news recently. I mean, you've announced a new product, an assistant of sorts. So I mean, we have to talk more about that in detail as to. I mean, we all get spam calls, and I mean, and also we get too many calls, not just spam calls, but also calls. I mean, it's been increasing. I personally hate to attend calls because I'm more of a text person, an email person. But be it genuine calls or spam calls, I always bombarded with so many calls. So, but then Truecaller is more popularly known for their caller ID and blocking solutions. So we can just quickly give our viewers some background on Truecaller and about the number of users you guys have.
Sure, Varun. So yeah, I think that's a great place to start as well. So you mentioned about the increasing number of calls, and you rightly mentioned it's not just spam, but sometimes maybe you're in a meeting, you're busy, you can't take those calls. Now those calls typically could be from somebody that you know. It could be from somebody that you don't know, but still, maybe it's not a spammer or something, but you still may want to attend that call or it may be important for you. So now in these scenarios, what do you do? Right? I mean, that's where this new product really comes in. And we call it the Truecaller Assistant because it's assisting your day-to-day communications. And so the idea behind the assistant is that if you are too busy or you can't take the call or you don't want to take the call, let your assistant answer the calls for you. And once it does, it'll talk to the caller, it'll find out who they are, what they want, and you can come back to it later whenever you're free. That's the idea.
Can you give us a kind of a background on the number of users Truecaller has globally and in India as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just a brief background. I mean, we don't want to get into too much detail as well on how large Truecaller is obviously really popular. It's the largest caller ID and spam blocking service in the world. There's about 360 million users globally, and a bulk of those, about 250 million of those, are in India actually. So India is the biggest market for Truecaller, but that doesn't mean that the other places are less important. In fact, Truecaller is also growing a lot in many different markets, like including the US, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, South Africa. So there's a very strong correlation between where Truecaller grows and where there is a lot of incidents of spam and scam, and people generally looking for a way to solve this menace.
But how did this assistant come about? I think it came via an acquisition, right? So you acquired a company.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So there was a company that Truecaller acquired called Call Hero, Israeli company, and once Call Hero was acquired, it was that technology that ultimately developed into the Truecaller Assistant. Now, Call Hero was a product that was already available in the US. At the time of acquisition, they were only targeting the US market at that time. And Truecaller's thought was that this is a fantastic piece of technology. It needs to be made much more widely available.
So, I mean, the assistant is kind of a buzzword, and but what is the assistant? What does it do? What can it actually do for me? Like, I'm sure it can take off some of my load of taking calls, but what can you explain more as to what the assistant can actually do for me, and who are these users who will find something like an assistant from Truecaller useful?
Sure, absolutely. So with Assistant, let me just walk you through how it works. And let's say you have set up Assistant. There's a little bit of a setup process. So once you have done that, let's assume that your Assistant is active and on your phone. You get a phone call and you can't answer the phone. You just tap a button on your screen that says send call to assistant. And what happens is that the call gets forwarded to the assistant. It uses cloud telephony as a technology, and that call gets forwarded. The assistant answers the phone. Now you can customize what the assistant says, like as a greeting. It could be just a simple hello, or it could be, hello, I'm a digital assistant speaking, you know, could you explain the reason for the call? Or, Varun is not available to take the call right now. You can really customize, you can do a lot of things. There's a whole bunch of templates as well, right? So you press the button, goes to assistant says an initial greeting, then it's up to the caller to introduce themselves or to say why they're calling, and you get some sort of context. And you can either let the assistant do its thing, or if you want, you can actually go live with the assistant. By that I mean you can look at what the assistant is saying and what the caller is saying in real time, because it uses a text to speech to text engine. So as the caller is speaking, you're seeing that text transcribed in real time. Now, it could happen that it's a really urgent call for you. And if that's the case, then you need to jump in and go live, right? Take over from the assistant. So you can do that. However, if it's not, you can prompt the assistant to ask a few questions like, hey, who's calling? Or can you explain the reason for the call? For instance, these are the two most important things that you would want to know, right? If it's an unknown caller. And you can prompt the assistant to ask that, or you can say, okay, I'm not interested. Or if it turned out to be a spam caller, you can block it right there and then through the assistant. So in a sense, it's acting like a assistant, but also a screening service for you, an extra barrier, so to speak. Now, Truecaller is going to tell you who's calling. More often than not, it's going to be correct. But there are some cases where it may have identified, but it's still somebody unknown to you. It's not a spam call, but somebody that you don't directly know, not saved in your contacts. So, which actually brings me up to another point, that as a user of Assistant, you have that customization available, that, okay, if it's somebody who's saved in my contacts who's calling me, let me answer the call always. And if it's somebody who's unknown, that means not saved in the contacts, I can choose, do I want to answer, do I want to send it to the assistant? If it's a top spammer or a known spammer, let it always go to the assistant. Those kind of customization are already available. And there's one more thing that I wanted to mention. You said that who could it be used for, right? Who might find it useful?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of, for instance, let's say a small business owner or
Mhm.
somebody who is self-employed. A phone call could mean a potential client for them. They don't always know who's calling. So, for that kind of a person, every phone call is important, right? They need to answer it. Now, there could be times where they genuinely can't. If you're out, they're in a meeting, they're traveling, whatever it is, right? And they can't answer those phone calls. At least they'll have the assistant. Every call is being answered by their assistant, and the assistant takes those messages, keeps those recordings, so that you can get back to those callers, when you have the time to do that. And it's a paid feature, right? Truecaller Assistant is paid, and this is again a question that we've got, that how
Why is it?
come, how
Yeah.
come, yeah, exactly. So there is always a free tier to Truecaller, and there are questions raised around that, like how come this, Truecaller is free. So the core services of Truecaller are always free. The caller ID and the spam blocking service, and there's no restriction on that. It's an ad supported service primarily. And then there are other methods where Truecaller earns revenue, which is through subscriptions. That means through the paid tiers within Truecaller, and there's a Truecaller for Business or Truecaller Enterprise tier. So you have to pay for assistant because there is a significant cost to the cloud telephony services. So actually, it's per call that there is a cost attached. So now we have an additional plan for assistant. So there's a free user, there's a standard, there's a premium user, or there's an assistant user, and then there is gold, which sits at the top end of our premium offerings. And a gold user gets obviously the gold badge, and will get all the existing and future products that we launch within the premium plan.
The customization, right? So is the greeting text completely customizable, or is there any restriction as to whatever you want to
Exactly,
say?
exactly.
Is it?
So by default, when you set it up, there is already a greeting in place, and if you want to just stick with the default option, you can. It's fully editable, so you can just change whatever it is that you want to.
Yeah, I did try it out, and I think it
Yeah,
led. I think I preferred the customized one over the default one because I think users are more likely to pick something which says my name or something they're reaching to me. So that
exactly. It
one.
works great with Indian names, by the way. So it's been tuned, to work like if you put in "Hi, I'm Varun's assistant," it'll actually say your name correctly. So
Mhm,
that's one thing that I think there was a lot of focus on to get the
mhm,
names right.
right,
Completely editable, of course. And the other idea is to just keep adding stuff into this. So right now, there's a whole bunch of voices, but more are being added. And there's a male voice or a female voice, different styles of speaking, like one may be polite, one may be courteous, one may sound slightly more professional. And
mhm,
whether the assistant speaks English or Hindi, you can decide. Right now those two languages are supported. There's also a Hinglish support, so if somebody is speaking a mix of both of the languages, the assistant does understand that and provide the response accordingly. In the customization options that are available to each user of the assistant, we are seeing people do interesting things. So, for instance, you might find it better to say, "I'm Varun's digital assistant." Not everyone wants to do that, right? They may just want to say hello and a question mark.
mhm,
Then that might prompt the caller to speak up faster or say something more relevant.
mhm,
Uh, or there's somebody might change it to better suit, let's say, the small business. "Hi, you have reached, our flower delivery service.
mhm.
Please leave your name and message, or you can, explain the reason for your call," so on and so forth. So there's different things that you can do, and it's a service that's evolving. Now we want to introduce more features to this, and that backend, that AI is going to evolve to add more things, right? It's going to get smarter. Apart from just the canned responses, it can start picking up more things. So that's really a little bit of the evolution, a little bit down the road. Right now, the focus is just to make it stable, make sure it's working across the different networks. There's a lot of work involved in that as well. A lot the different devices. You want to make sure it's stable, that people are, there's a little bit of a setup process required for assistant. So let's say it's a whole new user, right? First, they have to download, install, and set up Truecaller. That again takes about 30 seconds. But after they do that, they'll also need to set up Assistant, which is another 30-second or 1 minute process. And this is, of course, assuming that they have subscribed then to the assistant plan in order to do it. There is, of course, a free trial available. So, any one of the viewers who wants to try it out, they can always go and do that and just try it out for 14 days. That
There's a
offer is currently running.
2 week trial. Okay. So I mean, I just had a thought. So is it possible, I mean, maybe a feature request to instead of, I mean, some other voice, what if I could put my own voice in the greeting? Say, like record my own prompt
Yeah,
and say,
yeah.
okay, so that might increase the chances of the caller also responding. So,
We've heard this a lot as well already, that if somebody is calling me, the first thing, and especially if it's somebody who's known to me, they might be expecting to hear my voice. And if they hear an assistant which sounds different from my own voice, they might get put off. So that's why the existing customization is already there, that you can choose that for your existing contacts, you should not have the assistant, right? However, this specific part about recording your own voice, absolutely, that's also it's a great idea, and I think we should do it, and definitely.
and yeah, so and before we forget, I mean, to celebrate the launch of Truecaller Assistant, we have a giveaway going on Phone Arena. We're giving away, I mean, 4 Sennheiser headphones and
Yeah,
spike and chargers, and also you can win about 100 Truecaller Assistant subscriptions. So make
exactly.
sure to enter the giveaway and the link in the video below. And other than that, I mean, I think we pretty much come to probably the end of the video. Where is this heading? I mean, what next do we see in terms of features in Truecaller. I mean, Assistant, I think you've been teasing for a while, and it's finally available in India. And I mean, it's so you have AI assistant to attend your calls, and hopefully it might even, I think in the future, maybe you can even, depending on the caller, it might be able to even compose or draft replies. Is that something in the future? What?
I mean, it's all way down the roadmap, a lot of enhancements to Assistant. So I would say watch out for those. And it's all dependent on what the users want, right? So I would say if you're an existing user, keep that feedback coming into our social channels, to our support team, which is very active on Twitter, and on email. So every bit of suggestion is taken into account, even the smallest one.
If you are somebody who wants to kind of wants an AI assistant to take your calls and respond to them, or I mean, capture them for you and save you time, you can definitely check out the Truecaller Assistant, which is part of the Truecaller app on Android. So that's pretty much it. So thanks, Hitesh, for sharing all this information about the Truecaller
My
Assistant.
pleasure. Thanks a
Uh,
lot. Thanks a lot, Varun.
yeah, look forward to trying it out over the next few days and seeing
Absolutely.
how it kind of changes how I use the phone. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.